Yes, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Make sure to subscribe if you are new around here, and let's get on with the video. So, one of the beautiful things about football and one of the beautiful things about preseason is there's always new formations, there are always new adaptations, there are always new trends and new ways of playing the game that I've been watching my entire life, but people have been watching for over 150 years. I think one of the biggest questions that we have seen asked of Manchester United, and certainly been asked of Eric Ten Hag and actually Jadon Sancho, is what's going on with that false nine role. Now, ahead of Rasmus Hojlund joining up with the new teammates, Anthony Martial being out for all season, we've desperately needed to identify some options for Manchester United. Marcus Rashford playing down the middle as a regular number 9, albeit a pacey one, is probably the most default go-to option that everybody could expect from Manchester United. And amidst the news that Rasmus Hojlund's got an injury to his back, which might keep him out for a bit of a time, nice one, United definitely needs to have some options when it comes to how do we build up with a number 9 in the team. Marcus is far better off the left-hand side, and we've identified something. A false 9. And it's been a bit of a makeshift solution, and it's been a bit of an idea. We saw him do it a little bit at Ajax, not a lot admittedly, but it is something that he can do. But let's look a little bit about exactly what is a false 9 and why it's tailor-made for Jadon Sancho to maybe give himself another option and another way to get on the pitch to play for Eric Ten Hag. So the reason that it's called a false 9 is they line up on the pitch in the striking role, but realistically what they do is perform the duties of a number 10 or as well as a number 10. Therefore, it is not a real 9, it is a false 9. Apologies for teaching some of you to suck eggs there. And the false 9 gets involved in the build-up play. Most strikers, they want to lead the line. They're constantly pushing at the back of defenders, hanging out a little bit offside, trying to draw the back line back so you can create a little bit of space in midfield. The false 9 doesn't do that. The false 9 is part of the midfield, hence why it's a false 9. And it gets involved in the build-up play, and it gets involved with trying to overload the middle of the pitch so you can actually dominate the opposition with the ball. And passes from a player that's in the false 9 position often link up with wingers, and obviously the highest attacking midfielder, usually a number 10 or advanced playmaker. United situation, it's Bruno. And it creates some real nice patterns of play. Some of United's best football has been with what's been seen as our second string 11, but we've had like Eriksen and Donny van der Beek and Jadon Sancho all sort of being this creative playmaker sort of role, and allowing United to elicit a level of control and dominate the ball in the build-up. The primary successes that we've seen from this role come from the false 9 dropping in, and they create space. If it creates a conundrum for a centre-half. As a centre-half, someone comes up and plays up against you as a false 9, I've got some options. The first option is I stay tight to him. And when you've got a pacey side like Manchester United, underlaps and runners that are going to run in and off behind, you will see the likes of Marcus on one side and perhaps Anthony on the other side going 1v1 against fullbacks with a little bit of space opened up where you've dragged somebody out of position because they chose to follow you. Now, what you see more often is nobody chooses to follow you, and therefore that playmaker is now in space and he's able to get on the turn. When they get on the turn, they can see what's going on in front of them. They're able to pick a little bit of a better pass. So there's pros in both scenarios. If you drag somebody out of position, great. And if you don't get dragged out of position, you're in space. So having someone that comes off the main line like that to get involved in the build-up play is absolutely fantastic. And what the opposition then needs to do is they need to, one, make a decision which of those two things they're going to do. And quite often what it means is they're going to deputise the number 6 to look after the false 9 as he comes back into that sort of zone, which means you have somebody that is now free in the central midfield. The whole idea of doing it is to get more control on the ball and overload. So if they've got 3 in there, you've now got 4. If you've got 4 in there, you've now got 5 in there. So it just gives you an extra player and somebody else that you can help build up with in that area. If our wingers get 1v1 with someone, they can be absolutely lethal. And I think even if, as much as we'd like to see Tony Martial getting fit and doing something, do we have any trust that he will? When he was fit, Martial could do the link up and build up play quite well from here. Jadon Sancho is obviously not going to be an out-and-out number 9. So when he's deployed in this area, you get to see his best work, because Jadon Sancho's best work is operating, facing the goal, using his dribbling ability, and operating in between the lines. Sancho's looked good in this role, in my opinion, in pre-season, and he managed a very well taken goal against Arsenal from this position. And despite this, his deployment here obviously highlighted the absolute desperation for an out-and-out number 9, which obviously has happened with Hojlund, but I think we might need this. I think Ten Hag could be looking at a way, do you know what? There's going to be some games where I need to elicit a bit more control. He might be thinking of this as an idea for when we play against a team that maybe is going to dominate us with the ball, and maybe we would like to try and win some of that back by not quite matching up with the same forward line they do, but putting an extra person into midfield in this sort of sense. Now, Sancho linked the play very, very nice in the build-up phase, and he could have racked up more assists had finishing been a bit more clinical from his teammates. He's never really been a beat-your-man kind of winger. He operates in between the lines. We saw a lot of highlights of him breaking out against Dortmund because the nature of the Bundesliga, for Dortmund, sorry, because the nature of the Bundesliga is it's an extremely sort of transitional league. But that's not really what he's about. He's certainly not the Marcus Rashford counter-attacking winger. He's way closer to Grealish than he is Marcus, even though I don't think he's fully like Grealish, but he's more that sort of dribbler in between the lines. And I think he has looked good when he's got his back to defenders, and he's not relying on raw pace to try and beat a man. He's a player that's about the 1-2s, the link-up plays, the movement off and ahead of the ball, in between spaces rather than in behind a defence. Laurie mentioned something about the boss being impressed with what he'd seen from Sancho, which isn't surprising because I think he's done himself absolutely no harm whatsoever with the performances he's putting on playing this. So it makes you think, like, is this a role that Sancho can fulfill this season? I think there's still hope he could do something off the right-hand side. I think there's a competition to be had with Anthony there, who hasn't really lit it up himself. But I also think that there's a way to get Sancho into this team. Unfortunately, playing as a regular number 10 when you've got Bruno Fernandes, almost indestructible Bruno Fernandes in front of you, is probably a little bit unrealistic. And there's people that are calling for him to be moved on after a couple of lacklustre seasons at United. This season's going to be a huge one for him. And I think Ten Hag has got the tactical nous to be able to have different formations up his sleeve. Maybe, and certainly in the early part of the season, we might move to this in away games. United need to do something in away games. Didn't win against, what was it, the top 9, which only became a thing when United didn't manage it. But we do need to be better against those teams. And maybe one way for us to be better is to elicit a little bit more control in those games. And maybe we get that control by playing Sancho as a false 9 in those games. If Rashford can come close to the numbers that he put up last season, having an extra player to give us control and feed those balls into Marcus with someone whose ability is Jadon Sancho, that could be a lethal combination. And you could find space, and you can still hold your width on the right-hand side with Anthony, who I hope can start finding the net rather than row W with some of his shots. Sancho could be a real big asset in the squad by allowing us another option and another way to play. And it could even be that you see Sancho feature if we ever move to a 3 at the back. And I got a message off a lad I know called Jordan yesterday, someone I served with in Iraq actually. And he was saying, what about Wan-Bissaka on the right-hand side of a 3? Now, Wan-Bissaka in a defensive partnership as a 2, I don't think works. I don't think he's got the sort of awareness that you need as a defender in that particular set of circumstances. But in a back 3, it's a bit different. And I actually think it's not the worst idea. And I do wonder if when we go and play Manchester City, is a back 3 something that might be useful for us? We saw Ole Gunnar Solskjaer get a lot of success using Luke Shaw as part of a back 3 and getting results at the Etihad. Could Erik Ten Hag be switching to something where you maybe see a little bit of a hybrid defence? Maybe we do switch to a back 3 and maybe we switch to a Hojlund and Sancho partnership up front as a 2. Maybe that's something, or maybe a Sancho and Rashford, or maybe we're switching to something like that. A squad that's flexible and able to adapt to different tactical situations I think has got the potential to do an absolute madness. And maybe that's the difference between where we were last season and what we could be this season. Sancho's given him a lot to think about with these performances as a false nine. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments. Hey, thank you for watching the video. If you are new around these parts, then don't forget to subscribe. My channel is proudly supported by my community on Patreon. If you'd like to get a little bit of extra content, a Discord group, meetups, five-a-side games, weekly podcasts, behind the scenes, and even an occasional bit of transfer news as and when I get it, then for the price of a pint, you can show your appreciation for the content that we make and get some goodies for doing so as well. Check the link in the description or click the button right here. You'll also find all of my socials here too if you want to follow me on any of those platforms. Nice one.